Hello everybody, it's foofootoo here, and today I am going to be talking about Silvally and the best way to use it. So this is definitely one of the most hyped up Pokemon for this generation. It has a badass design and some awesome backstory about being created to kill Ultra Beasts in the image of RKS. I think it's really cool, but does it live up to all of that image? So before we get into the sets, I'm briefly going to go over its stats and moves. It has 95 base stats across the board, and this actually equals quite good bulk. 95 HP, 95 defense, 95 special defense is not bad. Its offenses are pretty good, but they're not the strongest. They're definitely usable though, and the speed stat is kind of middling. It's slightly lower than 100, which is a bit of a shame, and it will never really be the fastest thing on your team, but it's still usable. Its move pool is huge with really interesting set options. The most notable moves are probably Parting Shot, a really good momentum move which drops your opponent's attack and special attack before switching out. It gives you a ton of momentum and is very useful. It also now gets Defog from tutors, which allows you to support your team by removing any entry hazards that your opponent sets up, which can be really useful. In terms of special attacks, it's got tons of coverage options, which is really good and very helpful. And in terms of physical options, it doesn't have as many coverage moves, but it does have multi-attack, its signature move, a base 90 power move that changes types depending on which memory it holds. So the memory items are a key to Silvally, and it's really important to consider. What they do with its RKS System ability, it turns Silvally into loads of different types, and the multi-attack typing will adapt to match Silvally's type. And without any memory, Silvally is a normal type. This is cool because Silvally has so many options in terms of potential sets, and that's kind of why I thought I would create this guide, because it can be a bit confusing as to which ones are actually good, which ones are probably not worth it. But the big thing here is you have to hold the memory item, and it has no other effects other than changing Silvally's type. So you're basically sacrificing your item slot just to change types, and that is a big sacrifice because items can be so helpful in battle. So we need to really consider whether it's worth holding that memory. So, having got all of that background done, let's plunge straight into the sets. I'll talk about some normal type sets first that can use a number of different items which can really help out your team. The first one of these is the Darkinium Z Parting Shot set. Now, Parting Shot does not have very wide distribution. Silvally is one of few Pokemon that can use it well. We also see Alolan Persian and we also see Pangoro as decent users, but Silvally is here and it can hold that Darkinium Z. Now that allows you to use Z Parting Shot, which is a fantastic support move. It has the normal effect of Parting Shot in that you reduce your opponent's attack and special attack by one stage and then switch out into another Pokemon on your team, but that incoming Pokemon is then fully healed when you use it with a Z move. So that's really great later on in the battle when both teams have taken a bit of damage. You can then fully heal one of your teammates, which can then be in a great position to potentially sweep or clean up, and so it's such a great support move and definitely worth considering. In terms of attacks on this set, I think you want to run a physical set because you can use return here, but then you can also use crunch. So that's good coverage because your stab return hits quite hard, but then the crunch can be used to cover for ghost types, and if you don't use your Z Parting Shot, you can actually turn the crunch into a black hole eclipse to deal some big dark damage for one turn. The final slot is open for a number of different options. You could use something like Fire Fang or Flamethrower here to hit steel types, but I think Defog, just to support your team even more, could be very helpful, so that's a potential thing there. The next set I'm going to talk about is Choice Scarf. Silvally is quite a good choice user because when you use choice items, once you go for a move, you're locked into it and you can lose a lot of momentum. Your opponent can really capitalize on knowing what move you have to go for. And Silvally actually is quite good at keeping momentum just because of that Parting Shot attack. So that is really neat. And so Choice Scarf works well here because Silvally can be a good revenger. It pressures your opponent's team with the huge amount of special coverage it gets. Your stab move is probably going to be Hyper Voice, which is a bit more powerful, or Tri Attack, which has a chance to cause status. And then you've got two slots where you can choose Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Surf, Thunderbolt, Flash Cannon, whatever you want to better suit your team. And then the final move is always going to be Parting Shot, just because you really want to keep that momentum. Now, it's not the strongest Pokemon, but what's nice about it is it does hit a nice speed tier, and also that coverage means you're probably going to be hitting things super effectively quite a lot of the time, which is nice. You can potentially throw a choice specs on a similar set, but the thing is that Silvally isn't the strongest wall breaker. Its speed stat is probably more usable as a choice scarfer rather than its special attack stat as a wall breaker, so I would look to different Pokemon to be a wall breaker with a choice specs. The final normal set that I'm going to talk about is a choice band set. Now, we're going to have Return, or Double Edge, and Crunch on this set to deal big damage. And also, obviously, Parting Shot, because I said that just works so well on these choice sets. But the final move is really why I wanted to mention this set, and that is Explosion. Silvally actually has the strongest normal type Explosion in the game. The only Pokemon that can use stronger explosions are Pokemon with type changing abilities like Glaciate, Mega Glalie, and Galvanize Alolan Golem. There is no other Pokemon that can out-damage Silvally with that explosion attack, and it's cool because Silvally can hold that band as well, that choice band, which Mega Glalie can't. So this one attack deals so much damage and can be really nice on normal spam teams. So if you've got another normal type Pokemon that wants to sweep, for example, just some weird crazy ones that you might want to use, you could run a Swords Dance or even Belly Drum Zangoose now, which can get really powerful and sweep the opponent's teams with priority. But if they have one really bulky Pokemon, you can potentially tempt that in with the Silvally set and just take them out with an explosion, which would be really cool. So I just thought it would be worth mentioning that one because of its niche with that powerful explosion. Now I'm going to talk about the different types of Silvally to try and what roles they play. First off, I'm going to talk about Silvally Fairy, which is probably the most viable Silvally type, and that's because there aren't too many fairies in the lower tiers of singles and not many with this kind of stat spread, so it's unique in that respect. And also, Fairy typing is just a very good typing. It's a good offensive typing to spam, not many Pokemon resist those attacks, and it also takes on fighting types really well. It resists fighting type, and most fighting types carry knockoff as a coverage move for ghosts, and this thing eats those attacks up because it resists knockoff, and also knockoff's base power will be very low because you can't knock off memories. So Silvally Fairy is very viable on two fronts. In terms of the sets, it definitely wants to run multi-attack because, as I say, it's a really nice attack to spam. And then I'd also say to run Flamethrower to hit steel types really nicely. Parting Shot is great on this set to keep up momentum. And then the final slot can be a few different things. I would say maybe Defog to support your team if you need it. Swords Dance can be really nice though, just to pressure the opponent. If you click that Swords Dance, you're not necessarily going for the sweep because Silvally isn't really fast enough to sweep things, but just to apply that pressure and maybe to break a wall or two, it really makes that fairy spam even better. So I would say that this is really cool. Just to note on the set, obviously it's going to be max attack so that your multi-attack fairy spam is going to do as much damage as possible. You want it to be really fast as well to outspeed as many things as possible, although you can play around with the attack and the HP so that you could maybe take a few more fighting type hits. But this is going to be jolly just because the damage output on Flamethrower isn't affected too much. You're probably not turning many 2-hit KOs into 3-hit KOs, whereas keeping as much bulk as possible is really important, so I wouldn't want to run Naive on this set, just a point. The next Silvally I'm going to talk about is Silvally Ghost, another really viable Silvally type. Why this thing is so cool is because your opponent can't see on Team Preview what type your Silvally is, so they just see a Silvally Normal on Team Preview. And how that works in your favor is this is a really cool spin blocker for hazard setting teams. So if you want to stack hazards on your opponent like Stealth Rock and Spikes, your opponent might just think that you can do that because it's fine, they have a rapid spinner in the back, they'll just spin them away in a bit. But when they try to spin, you bring in your Silvally Ghost, which is completely immune to the attack, and they can't get rid of those hazards, and that means that you can whittle away their team whenever they switch. It's really, really potent. Silvally is good at this because not only is it relatively bulky, but not many ghost types get momentum moves, and Parting Shot is such a good one. So for this ghost set, it's going to be a special attacker just so that you can take advantage of really good coverage moves as well as using Shadow Ball. So you've got Shadow Ball, Flamethrower, and Ice Beam, all hitting a nice range of Pokemon. And the last move can maybe be a status move. You wouldn't really want to run Defog on this set because obviously you want to hazard stack, but you can run Parting Shot really great for keeping up that momentum. And also, if you're concerned about the ghost type going down and you're really reliant on that spin block, you can put Rest there instead. But this one is really good just for switching in on spin blockers, dishing out some damage and Parting Shotting out of there to make your opponent switch again, just keeping that momentum. So it's really good at that and a nice one to try. Now I'm going to talk about Silvally Steel. Why I thought this was worth mentioning is it's great monotyping. You don't get many pure steel types, and definitely not in the lower tiers as much either. This is probably going to be the bulkiest Silvally set I talk about, just because it is very good defensive typing, and you're definitely going to want to invest in its HP stat as much as possible, and probably one of the defenses too, although you might want to play around with the speed to make sure you outspeed specific things. I think the best set for this is probably Flash Cannon and Flamethrower. So Flash Cannon is your stab, and then Flamethrower covers for all those steel types. And then you can probably go Rest Talk to keep this thing healthy, to keep it alive, and you can still deal some damage. But if you want it to be a defogger, it can be a relatively good defogger because it resists those Stealth Rock, so you could put on a different set with Defog and Parting Shot as well. But if you want to use this thing as more of a bulky Pokemon, I really like the Rest Sleep Talk idea. It doesn't get any recovery outside of that, so you really need to consider Rest if you want to keep it around as long as possible. Now I'm going to talk about my favourite Silvally type yet, and that is Silvally Water. And this has gotten a massive buff with the Defog. I think it's particularly good at defogging because it actually beats most hazard setters one-on-one. That's because Silvally Water has a very strong Surf attack, and that beats all the rock types and the ground types that want to set up Stealth Rocks. You've also got Flamethrower on there to hit the steel types that want to set up Stealth Rock and Spikes, and then also Thunderbolt to hit other water types that could potentially also set up hazards like Quillfish, Omastar, and just to hit them in general because Surf and Flamethrower are resisted by them, so Thunderbolt's good there too. And then your final move is Defog because you want to get anything that's set up away, and then you can pressure those hazard setters out so they can't set up anymore, and you can really keep those hazards off your side of the field. What's really cool about this set is most Silvally only carry 2 coverage moves because a lot of them, like Parting Shot and then another utility move, a status move, something like that, defog a lot nowadays. But I like this because people are always really surprised that you have Surf and then Flamethrower and they haven't seen Thunderbolt yet. They think they're safe, but you hit them with that too. This thing has got so many surprise KOs for me, and I love it. So this is obviously going to be really offensive, max speed, max special attack to punish those hazard setters as much as possible, and I've really enjoyed this one. I definitely recommend you trying this out in the PU tier. The last set that I'm going to go into detail on is Silvally Dark. This one is really cool, and it was suggested to me by my buddy Lars, aka El Scissor. I had not considered this myself, but why it's cool is that Silvally gets Pursuit, which hits Pokemon that try to switch out. And again, this is particularly good on Silvally because your opponent can't see the type of Silvally at team preview. So they may look at your team and think they don't have a dark type. I can go in with my powerful psychic type and spam psychic type attacks. You whap in your Silvally Dark that's completely immune to those psychic type attacks, and then you can Pursuit trap them for stab damage, for super effective damage, and for double damage if they try to switch out. So you can get rid of their psychic type super early in the game. It goes for ghost types as well. If you want to get rid of some spin blockers, you could potentially do that really well with Silvally Dark. I like the idea of this set so much, and it's obviously going to be an offensive set, a physical set, purely physical, which we haven't really seen so far. So again, another reason why this one is quite cool. You're going to have that multi-attack, which is a powerful dark type attack. You're going to have that Pursuit, and then I would say U-turn over Parting Shot on this set because it helps hitting other dark types. You can hit those super effectively. And then the final move can be another coverage move, such as Iron Head for fairies or Zen Headbutt for fighting types, which again might want to switch in on you. But I think this one's a really cool one. It performs a very specific role that's quite different to the other Silvally types, so try that one out too. I'll go into some other Silvally sets in a little bit more of brief detail. First one, Silvally Dragon can be very tempting because it does get Draco Meteor surprisingly, which is a very powerful dragon type move, but something to bear in mind is that many other dragon types get Draco Meteor and they can have higher special attack and can hold the choice specs, so they're much more effective wall breakers. What Silvally has over them is that it does have momentum move in Parting Shot, so you can get Draco Meteor's special attack drop and then keep momentum by Parting Shot out, whereas normally you lose a lot of momentum after a Draco Meteor with those special attack drops. But really, I don't think it's worth going for just because you don't hit hard enough with the Silvally. Another one that's kind of in the same category as Dragon is Silvally Bug, which can go for stab U-turns. Other Silvallies can't do that, but other Pokemon can. So, for example, Choice Banded Ninjask or Choice Scarfed Scyther, they can do stab U-turn damage a lot better than Silvally, but Silvally only takes a quarter of its health in damage when it switches in on Stealth Rock, whereas the other two are quad weak to Stealth Rock, which is much worse. So you might want to consider it for that reason, but I don't think that it's particularly viable over other Pokemon. One set that I think has potential is electric Silvally, because electric typing doesn't have too many weaknesses, so it's probably going to stick around for a little while, and it does have really nice electric stab with ice coverage. It's got ice beam to hit ground types really hard. Ground types obviously are immune to electric type attacks, so you can lure in those ground types, hit them with super effective ice coverage, and that can really help your team out. For example, if you've got a rock type sweeper like Lycan Rock, that really appreciates ground types being taken out, and so you can definitely do that with Silvally Electric. It's generally a good defensive typing. You can put Parting Shot on there, you can put Defog on there, and then just the multi-attack or the Thunderbolt and the Ice Beam. And yeah, I think that could be a really good set to support a team with a rock type sweeper. The final set I'm going to just briefly mention is Silvally Poison, because Poison is a very good defensive typing. Silvally has nice bulk, so you could put a Silvally Poison out there. I would say that it's probably not as viable just because it's probably trying to do a similar thing to Silvally Fairy in terms of resisting fighting type hits. And I think Silvally Fairy does that better because Fairy is a better spammable move. You can go for multi-attacks and not many things will resist it, whereas Poison has a couple of resistances, but it's also got the Steel immunity, which can really let it down. So I would say it's probably not quite as viable as the Fairy type Silvally. So there are still some Silvally types that I haven't talked about, and that's because I don't really see their niche. I don't think that they're particularly standing out in any other way, and so I wouldn't necessarily consider them, but it may just be that I haven't thought of a really cool way to use them. So if you have ideas for any of those other Silvally types, or any of the ones that I have mentioned in this video, please leave a comment below and let me know which is your favourite Silvally type to use, because I'd be really interested. As I say, I do really like this Pokemon. I'm really excited to use it this generation, especially now it gets Defog. That is a great buff. I think personally the one I'm most excited about using is Silvally Water, just because that special move pool is really good, and I think you'll be able to get some really neat KOs with that. But that's going to be all for today. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Fufu, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.